All right, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Protecting and Enabling Remote Workers with 5 Essential Solutions webinar, brought to you by Otava and Veeam. We have a great lineup for you today. We have some great panelists on the call here to present to you. First thing we're going to do is we're going to kick it off with going through the risks and benefits of remote workers. We'll then do a little bit of a deep dive into a case study with a real life customer example of how we help them transition to a remote workforce. And we'll talk about those 5 essential solutions along the way of what we can do to help further protect and enable our remote workers. We'll finish it off with a quick Otava overview and we'll dive into Q&A. Just a quick housekeeping note, this is going to be a panel discussion today. So we have great speakers lined up. We're going to be interrupting each other. We're going to be bouncing ideas off each other, keeping it really open and informal and unscripted for you. So please chime in with any questions or thoughts yourself. The chat feature on your screen, or excuse me, the question feature on your screen is open to you to use throughout the webinar. And we will have a Q&A session at the end too if you didn't get your question answered on time. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to our panelists today. So we do have Dan Burke, who's a Cloud Territory Manager for Veeam Software. And then we have my colleague, Chad St. Thomas, a Solutions Architect over here at Otava. And then myself, Sydney Diedrich, I am the Director of Marketing, and we're all very excited to be here today. Remote work is near and dear to our hearts, as I'm sure it is to yours over the last 2 years, spending an abundance of time working remotely. And on that note, I'll go ahead and jump right in. So at the risk of sounding obvious, we know that remote work has seen exponential growth over the last 2 years. At the onset of the pandemic, remote work grew by around 87% in our country alone. It's according to a stat by FlexJobs. And today, we have about 59% of the American workforce working remotely. And as the world begins this slow transition from pandemic, as we have been experiencing over the last 2 years, to what's hopefully an endemic situation, where we're just kind of maintaining the virus, and it's part of our lives moving forward, many companies are finding themselves in a crossroads on this decision of how do we handle this post-pandemic workforce? Do we bring our employees back into the office full-time? Do we allow them to work from home part-time, or do we transition to remote work full-time? And according to Owl Labs, we're not getting away from remote work anytime soon. Employees are setting the bar for us. There's 90% of remote workers are telling us that they are more productive working from home than they are working in the office. They're not distracted by water cooler talk, if you will, and they're able to get their work done in a more productive manner. And that's very powerful for employers, right? Given the huge shortages in skilled labor, having a more productive workforce can make all the difference. And one area that actually has been brought, I think, to light throughout the pandemic was the impact on mental health and burnout culture that Americans go through. And actually, employees are telling us that 74% of remote workers are saying it's better for their mental health to be at home. They're finding joy in the little things, from being at home, being closer to their families, having more work-life balance, if you will, being able to take some time stepping away from the desk throughout the day, and maybe going on a walk, or getting some chore knocked out that you've been waiting on in between calls and meetings and what have you. And finally, at the end of the day, employees are happier working remotely. Data and surveys are telling us that if given a choice, employees would pick a remote job over an in-person job. And I'm not sure about any of you, but I've enjoyed the flexibility in my personal experience working remotely and being able to spend that time with my family, or go on that walk and things like that. It's just generally happier employees tend to make more longevity with their employers. And the bottom line is, when we're talking about this remote workforce revolution, we're all trying to figure it out right now. And we're kind of on this precipice of make it or break it with how we approach the remote workforce. But I touched on these briefly on the last slide. These are there's a lot of benefits that employees experience on a personal level and a specific to them. But there's also benefits that the businesses experience. And I really want to take a second to talk about those on why companies are making these leaps into remaining remote. And for some businesses, not all, there's a lot of variation between companies, but there's great benefits in reducing overhead costs. So clients are transitioning to work full-time. Offices are no longer required. People are letting go of their leases, losing or saving money on office space. People are saving money on fuel economy and no longer commuting to the office, which kind of helps businesses in regards to any stipends that they're offering for traveled workers and things like that. People are downsizing office space, which also helps with reducing that overhead cost as well. And it's kind of allowing businesses to get more creative with what they're offering their employees from a benefits perspective as well. Increased productivity, we mentioned this on the last slide. I know that we've seen that from our business, from an Otava perspective, that employees are incredibly productive working from home. They're not always slaves to the clock. You have the flexibility to say, I'm going to wake up when I want to wake up. I'm going to start working when I want to start working. And then I might get caught up in a task and all of a sudden look up and it's 7 o'clock and it's time for dinner. And I didn't even realize that I had let the day get away from me. I've been guilty of that personally. I don't know about any of you on the call here. There's also the fact that the commute takes time out of your workday. If you have to get up and drive to the office, we have a lot of employees here at Otava that work either an hour to an hour and a half away from where the office is, and they did do that commute pre-pandemic every single day. So not having to get on the road and actually be able to get up when you normally get up and just start working is huge in terms of productivity. So overall, employees are accomplishing more with their time. And then employees are happier. And I don't know about you guys, but happier employees tend to stay around more. It's huge for businesses and not having to train and retrain employees over and over again because they're dissatisfied with their job. They're not getting their work-life balance. They're not getting whatever benefits that they are looking for because of their in-person job. So happier employees, happier employers, which helps us cut down on that transition and switching costs, if you will.
For sure. And Sydney, I think the happier employees and the increased productivity are really tied together much more closely than even that lower overhead piece. And I always think about this in terms of my own experience. I mean, maybe I'll just be honest. I definitely get a little bit of road rage, and I live in Metro Denver, and I sit in the traffic on I-25, and it's been, in previous jobs, it was absolutely horrible losing a couple hours a day to go however many 7 miles or something absurd like that. So I think in addition, to not having that additional stress, right, and the ability to be able to put those hours in potentially, at 7:30 a.m. That's kind of when I check in. I've got partners and customers on the East Coast and the West Coast, so getting started early is a huge benefit. But I will point out one other thing around timing. I try not to work until 7. It's pretty difficult. I've got a puppy. He's now 2, and he is trained, right at about 5 o'clock. He starts scratching at my legs. So it's been nice to be able to not have to sit in the car and instead take the dog for a walk.
Yeah. I'll also add to that if depending on your employer or your company values and your pillars, having happier employees and having that wellness feature is really important to a lot of organizations, right? So a lot of organizations are choosing to prioritize the health and happiness of their employees over the importance of being in the office.
Right.
So it's a really interesting time to navigate that workforce in this corporate America. Or really with the world as a whole, but for us, at least America. So great. But it's not always, rainbows, sunshine, ponies, if you will. There's a lot of issues that remote work brings up for businesses. There's a lot of risk factors that we experience and a lot of issues that these businesses are finding themselves navigating that they hadn't had to do before. So I'm going to turn it over to Chad, and Chad, if you would walk us through some of those risks that companies are experiencing today.
Yeah, no worries. And I'll also add to that working happy, making workers stay longer in terms of the flexibility for me as a solution architect has made it to where I could have calls at different parts of the day that normally I might have been driving to or from work. And so I can adjust my day to kind of fit things that maybe that normally wouldn't have fit in my normal day, just so that I can, accommodate my company as well as I get the flexibility. So it allows me to make that. But to go into the dark and gloomy stuff, when it comes to remote workers being at risk, there's a lot of new things that come from that. Like now we have laptops at home all the time, and there's a lot of varying risks that come with that, making sure that on top of there being more ways to access and share data than there ever has been before, there's also different risks that have been associated with that now. Like, for example, if you leave your computer open and you have roommates, now there's a potential risk that those people could get on your device, right? There's a whole sort of different aspects that are added to that on top of like security patches, making sure that if it can't be done through group policy or having to email everybody to make them download something and having them verify that they've done that, because if you let one person not do it, then you're only as strong as your weakest link. And it's a really popular term, but it's also very true. So like if one person is a hole in that organization, they could compromise the entire company. And it's not that they mean to, but there's certain added things now that we have to be thinking about to kind of add to that equation. And so like with the home part down just under the home routes, without having your physical firewalls or any of your edge gateways or anything like that, you have to make sure that there are other things in place to ensure that those devices are safe on somebody's home internet, because we can't really necessarily trust Comcast or Lumen or anyone to kind of make sure that those ISP routes are safe whenever it comes to your actual device. And then public Wi-Fi, even if you're at home Wi-Fi, including public Wi-Fi for people who work in public work places, or maybe they just want to go take a meeting at Starbucks, because again, that flexibility that it's allowed them now, you can't necessarily guarantee that everyone's always going to be at home. They could be anywhere, and having that public access obviously opens those grounds for having data taken, or access points into someone's devices, all sorts of things that are not good.
I actually just upgraded my Verizon to unlimited whatever 4G, and I only tether now. It's not even worth trying to play the public Wi-Fi game. Not only scary, the quality of the network is often pretty bad.
Yep. I mean, I use at-home VPNs on my phone. Like I have a phone VPN built into my phone, as well as I have a VPN at home for my home internet,
Right.
for the very same reason.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a pretty scary time in the world with regards to cyber warfare and cyber threat and different issues that are arising for businesses, and navigating those on at-home networks and public Wi-Fi and where you're not necessarily controlling that access point is very difficult. And this is a whole new breadth of issues that we're presenting to organizations out there from a security standpoint. And our job as Otava is educating companies on how to approach this and keep those devices secure, keep your network safe, avoid those ransomware attacks and any other cyber threat out there. And it's hard because it's not only about maintaining the devices in the network, it's also educating employees on how to recognize those threats. And we don't even have that risk up here, but it's a big one, right? On how do we keep our employees abreast of what those attacks look like as they change every day, because hackers are smart, right? And accessing those networks from multiple devices, not just your laptop. It can be your phone, it can be your tablet, and making sure that all of those devices are kept secure is our biggest risk factors and challenges, I think, for organizations, right? And as we talk about challenges, there are many. Chad, go ahead.
And yeah, the challenges are literally endless sometimes when it comes to how you can mitigate as many of the variables that exist out there. I mean, even to talk about current events right now with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, there have been reports coming out recently that there might be a large directed cyber attack towards the US from Russia as a result of everything that's going on over there. So all sorts of different things going on at all times. And the challenges that kind of come with that is the zero tolerance for downtime and data loss, which obviously is super important, right? If you can't have certain servers working, or you can't have things running, then that obviously affects your day-to-day business. You can't make money if you can't utilize the things that help you run your business, right? And so that is a super important aspect that kind of carries us off into then keeping that data safe. So if you're doing your backups, you're doing everything you need to do, you have a disaster recovery site, making sure that you keep all of that data protected, on top of which to ensure that if something were to happen, just maybe a natural disaster or a combo of a couple of different things, that you're actually safe from ransomware, disasters, any of that kind of stuff, and keeping all of that more or less very front in mind, because you don't want it to be something that matters when it happens. You want it to matter before anything happens, so that you can mitigate any issues. And then meeting compliance and retention goals now as a part of ransomware and cyber attacks, and the fact that there's such a growing amount of these things happening every day, every second, compliances and retention goals are starting to change and adjust to fit some of the new variables we're dealing with. So having backups might be a part of your compliance now, because, there's a lot more of things being targeted toward like the health industry because of COVID and other things like that now have shifted the focus to making sure that everything is protected at all times. And then obviously the retention goals start extending even further back in time, because what if somebody gets into something and tries to play the long con and encrypts files and do certain things over a point of time? We have to be able to go back as far as those things are uncorrupted to be able to rebuild those servers, and a lot of times try to reclaim that data back. On top of recovering, despite of staffing or storage shortages, trying to buy servers and things right now is on top of which being super expensive. The shipping isn't guaranteed at all. I buy things from third-party vendors that aren't even technology related, and the shipping takes what feels like they're riding it in by horse. At least that's my normal complaint about it as of recently. And that sort of thing doesn't make the pricing any easier either. So now on top of the shipping times being extended, now prices are going up because we have inflation as it relates to all of this. And that's super important, right? And then at the end of the day, we have to be able to protect that company data when we have people working from home or in public spaces or anything. Because at the end of the day, your intellectual property is yours and you don't want anyone else to have it. That's obviously pretty clear, right? So that's kind of the challenges as they go. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm hearing, it's interesting, I'm hearing a significant recent increase in the ability to be able to buy storage. And I know that Veeam partners like Otava are buying this stuff in a tremendous scale, so you guys have more have more buying power and all the rest of that stuff. But some of our smaller partners who are either trying to get hardware for their clients on-prem or hosting small data centers, things like that, they're having a really difficult time. And I think that is going to change the dynamics over the course of 2022 around, whether or not people want to invest, significantly overpriced hardware in the data center on top of all the rest of those considerations. So it kind of, paints a good story for Otava around things like offsite backup and storage, cloud.
Yeah, it's super interesting, Dan. I think two big challenges that you hit on, Chad, are supply chain issues and lack of skilled labor. I think that those are above and beyond the most prominent ones that I've been hearing from our clients out there. And to your point, Dan, yes, Otava, thankfully, we are very proactive and very forward thinking in terms of planning for our storage. So we are looking good there. But we've been talking to a lot of clients who haven't been as fortunate, and they haven't done the pre-planning, and they're looking at 6 to 8 months out until they can actually even get any sort of devices to back up their data.
Yeah, that's the time frame I've been hearing too, like 6 months. Scary.
Yeah, and a lot of these things aren't things that can wait, right? They're, especially now when we're talking about cyber threats and issues that businesses are facing. So these are real challenges, and I don't know if anyone out there is facing those themselves. But I think it's a great time to put this poll question up there and talk about how your business has kind of reacted to the remote workforce shift. Have you done any additional security measures? Have you taken any additional security measures to assist with remote work and help ensure that your employees are safe. So we have that poll question up on your screen. We'll give you a couple minutes, a couple seconds. I don't know about minutes, but go ahead and put your answers in there so we can get the results out to you guys. And Dan, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, we were talking a little bit while people are putting their answers in here, talking a little bit about that work from home balance, not to rewind too far, but I had a conversation with somebody the other day who said that one of the interesting outcomes of working from home is that they are just scheduled back to back all the time. And I wonder sometimes if, one of the benefits, and believe me, I'm not super eager to go back into the office. I work from home anyway, but regardless, but one of the benefits about being face to face, even if it's a couple days a week, is the ability to have a 5-minute conversation, right? Or a 10-minute conversation. I was an SE for a while, and people would just pop in, their head over my cube, and then we can have a conversation. And now we're booking a 30-minute meeting, and it really does. I look at my calendar now, and it goes from, 8:30 in the morning to 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, just booked solid. It's a weird outcome of the work from home, work remote.
I've definitely been seeing that a bunch as well. And in terms of, I think I've come with my own version of mitigating that, but I think a lot of it is just the being able to set aside time to be able to get those meetings done right. Or, if people could do things, via email or a Teams message, having to, I guess, try to shift the focus to, hey, you can do those impromptu chats, but maybe the way that we handle those chats maybe should be adjusted a little bit, which obviously is never easy because change is not fun, but I've seen some recent success in that. But again, that's a product of working from home. So
a lot of big changes, cultural stuff. Yeah, cool. All right, Cindy, what do we have?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you guys can see the screenshot I've put up here on the screen. I don't know if I shared the PowerPoint or my desktop correctly. But it looks like we've got about 69% have answered yes, that their company has deployed additional security measures out there, which is awesome, which is what we want to hear, right? I think that's the way that many businesses are going. They're employing additional security measures to ensure that remote workforce is protected. But we do have those numbers that are still unsure, and that's saying no. And it's not surprising either, because the human nature tendency is to think this won't happen to me. We're going to be fine. We've been doing it this way and it's been fine, and it's not broke, don't fix it, and all of those things until it is. And I think that's where a lot of businesses are getting into trouble, is that they have not been as proactive in protecting their workforce. And it's an issue that isn't one until it is one, right?
Right. Well, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know, and that's why we're doing this today, right?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you guys for that feedback. Hopefully we're keeping this interactive for you guys and making it interesting. But I think this leads us to really the biggest issue and overall problem that companies are finding themselves in right now. We talk a lot about risk and we talk a lot about benefit. And how do we minimize that risk and maximize the benefit for remote workers? And I think it's something that we're on that precipice of, right? Of this transition has been going on for 2 years, and it's no longer a transition. It's like, this is a way of life, remote workforce. And it's not a part of your business's strategy. Are you in with the times? Are you behind the times rather? Because what we're finding is that not only is there a skilled labor shortage, but the ones that are skilled and that are looking for jobs are looking for that flexibility in those remote jobs. So when we're talking about these challenges, we now, another poll here, want to hear from you guys. What are the biggest challenges that working remotely has presented to you? And I know that it's interesting because we talked a lot before this call about challenges that we've personally experienced. And I actually welcomed a daughter in the beginning of the pandemic. So I spent the first year and a half of COVID working from home with a small child on crying in the background of calls, and then Amazon delivery trucks coming to the door, and then the child crying, and then the dog barking, and all of these things that you just never thought you'd have to navigate in the middle of a global pandemic. So there's been a lot of funny ones that we brought up. I don't know, Dan, if you want to share some of yours.
I was gonna say I have one that happened today. I was doing a call with the client, and we're looking over some of their Veeam services, and in the middle of that, out my window, I can see my trash can like gliding down the street, because we've been having some like 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts today.
Yeah.
I'm sure Sydney and Dan have seen it, but I watched my trash can float away, and I had to be like, you know what, can I like just leave for a second? And then I went and saved my trash can, and then told them what happened. So every day, I swear,
Yeah.
something new.
The one I heard last week, I was talking to one of our architects. He says he's had to bring in redundant internet at the house because he does so much presenting and lots of webinars and things like this that he can't afford to have his internet go out. And he's seen a handful of other people he's presented with who've only had, just their Comcast or whatever it is, and it goes out, and all of a sudden he's all by himself on the webinar. So lots of things like that I think we hadn't previously considered.
Yeah, but some of those options aren't on here. Those fit under the other category.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I talking about webinars, I was on a webinar and my call dropped. Like my cell phone call dropped because I was calling off of my cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty terrible. But yeah, connectivity issues I think are a big one.
Yep.
And trying to navigate technology that maybe you're not always used to, because you're used to like how it works so seamlessly in the office, or
Yep.
maybe it works more seamlessly at home for you.
Yep.
But yeah, those are interesting ones. All right, let's see what we have here for results. It looks like communication above and beyond is a really big one. And I think we struggle with that internally as well, and just making sure that everyone is on the same page with things. And how many meetings is too many meetings? I think, Dan, you and I were talking about all of a sudden, is it important enough for a phone call, or is it an email and meetings all day?
Right.
Are you actually getting things done, or are you more productive when you block your calendar off and say, I'm busy today and I'm focusing on my tasks rather than meeting with you all day?
Yep.
And then security and compliance, of course. I think even if you did answer the poll question, yes, my company put together some security and compliance solutions in the wake of remote workforce. I think that there's so many ways to approach that there's not one right answer. There can be many wrong answers depending on your network and your environment. But finding the right mix of solutions that work for you from a security and compliance standpoint can be difficult and challenging. And that's where someone like Otava would come in and help to ensure that we're making something tailored for your business from a security perspective. We've actually done that. We'll dive into the case study here next and talk through how we did that for one of our clients. And productivity, I think, is on a rolling scale. I don't think that productivity is linear. I think it definitely goes up and down on the day. Like today, Chad, I'm sure that trash can just totally threw you off. Other days you can kind of get into a groove and keep going with it. But awesome. Thank you guys again for the participation here. And without further ado, I'm looking forward to jumping into this case study here. So we do have a client that came to us at the beginning of the pandemic. This is a real world example. We have changed the name to protect their privacy, but for the sake of this webinar, we'll call them Trusted Trucking. And so Trusted Trucking is in the transportation industry. They are a short and long distance freight and logistics transportation hauler located in the Western US. And they had an interesting dilemma that was brought to them by COVID, where they were an essential business, but they had many employees, over 500 employees, not including truck drivers. and they had a portion of those that are not essential. And so they wanted to maintain the productivity of the essential workers while also maintaining the productivity of the non-essential workers and keeping them safe and moving them home without disrupting their business. And so they came to Otava and they said, what can we do? And to give you some background here, they weren't starting from scratch from a solution perspective. They had a lot of different cloud solutions in place that would help them with this transition, but they had never used them remotely before. So they had a hybrid cloud solution in place. They did have cloud backup and DR, and we were doing some managed service for them as well. But Chad actually worked directly with this customer, which is really great to have him on the call here to talk through what the challenges were as they arose. And so Trusted Trucking came to us, and their first challenge was, how do we enable our employees to access our servers now that everyone is working from home? And Chad, why don't you talk about first thing that we walked them through?
Yeah, so that first thing ended up being the virtual desktops, and it was super important because they had the issue of, everyone got laptops, sure, okay, well, how do we keep, the data from being stored on the local computer because of, well, in this case, added risk of life, if you will. A good example would be if you have pets jump on your desk, knock your laptop off, or knock a cup of coffee over because you're trying to feed your baby, or a whole multitude of different additional variables that no one can control anymore. And so the virtual desktop part kind of covered that first basis of how do we get people working somewhere other than on their actual thoughts, obviously through their laptop, but not having everything saved locally, so that if something were to happen to that device, we just get them a new device and they just log back into that virtual desktop and keep chugging along again. And the important part of that was the fact that you could deliver your applications. You can manage the applications from your perspective in terms of being able to give people specific landing pads that they can use to jump to specific things, and making sure that you're controlling that process as opposed to somebody having to remotely go and access a machine or having any other parts, because even RDSing, you have to then make sure that you have a DMZ or other security within your network to keep people from being able to get into your servers. And then also having that ability to support both Windows and Linux machines.
Yeah, it's super. Virtual desktops has been an amazing solution for our customers that are moving their workforce remotely, especially ones that are in the beginning were really unsure of how to navigate it, because virtual desktop allows you to kind of control the patching and management of that device when you don't control the network. It makes sure that there is a barrier between the network and the device, so that there's no kind of transmission that can happen. If your machine gets infected, your network doesn't get infected, because your employees are accessing the network through this virtual desktop where we're having some semblance of control and uniformity. And then there's also the fact that throughout this last 2 years, I think as any other time, there's been a lot of turnover, a lot of change, a lot of transitions within organizations, and devices aren't always returned. So the nice thing about that is they're not losing that data because it's still backed up into the company's overall files and servers, and it's accessible remotely. So that remote access point goes both ways. So clients can, your employees can access your servers remotely, and you can access their device remotely, which has made it a lot easier for customers going through those transitions. And then the fact that theft is also a big issue. People aren't traveling as much anymore, or at least they weren't then, but they're maybe working outside or working from a park or things like that. I know I personally went to parks and tried to get outside as much as possible in the beginning of COVID, and would bring my laptop. And if things happen, you step away, what have you, if that device gets stolen, you maintain that data as well.
This one is actually near and dear to my heart. I'd spent 15 years doing as an IT director and consultant, et cetera, for several law firms here in Denver. And one of the solutions that we consistently implemented, everybody has VMware, everybody was getting Veeam, but everybody who had a suite of applications that had certain latency requirements and those sorts of things, we would always put in some sort of a virtual desktop solution. And in legal, it's all about billing your time for money and productivity. So it eliminated a ton of those concerns around applications not performing properly or disconnects and these sorts of things. So anybody who's got a suite of apps out there, and for them, it was document management and time and billing and all the rest of this kind of stuff. But anybody who's got a suite of applications that are server-based can really benefit from a virtual desktop solution.
Absolutely. Which kind of brings us to the second challenge. So we helped their employees make sure that they could access the servers remotely. And now that they were able to do that, how do they make sure that the endpoints themselves are safe? So we talked a little bit about in the last one about if your laptop gets infected, at least your network doesn't get infected. But now you're left with an infected laptop. So we have those employees that aren't always using the virtual desktop, even though they've been instructed to. How do we make sure that we're protecting all aspects of the business? So Chad, I'll pass back to you.
Yep, no worries. And so that second challenge we solved by doing the laptop and the endpoint security. And what was important about that was, it's kind of going back to my earlier conversation of how now there are new increased variables. So like having, I happen to have a VPN in my house, but I highly doubt that is a commonplace thing that people are doing. And having that laptop security is going to be super important for you, being able to do log management. So being able to alert yourself if certain things are being done when you're monitoring the device, that maybe alert to, a new vulnerability that maybe just happened, or having some form of security analytics that are qualifying certain things and then investigating. And if it has to make action, either prompting you to do that new action, whether it be, hey, you need to push out this update to all your devices, or hey, I removed this from this device. And then you might have to go look into, well, how did it get there? Was it something that they downloaded? Was it, were they, clicking phishing links and that prompted a download or something like that? Having to cover all of those bases and maybe more or less utilizing that endpoint and security to be able to fully make sure that every much variable as possible can be covered. And if any random things, we can allow the actual endpoint security application to manage that for us. And a lot of that actually can now be included in things for your security orchestration, and having the automated parts of that, being able to develop those responses or anything that you want. On top of some of this now is going to be started including in people's compliances. And so having that type of software there now ahead of time kind of keeps you from running into some trouble later down the road when maybe that was added to a compliance that now you aren't being compliant with because you don't have any endpoint security. And that's a big growing problem that can be easily solved by just getting that laptop security on those endpoints.
Yeah, and I think another big issue that this solves, right, is some of those user error ransomware infections. Being able to go into the logs and get some alerting into any sort of suspicious activity on those devices, I think is critical in terms of reaction time. Because Chad, you were talking about those ones that kind of hide out and will sit on your system for weeks or months at a time, and no one's the wiser. This gives you more power to say, hey, I know that there's something there and that we need to do some remediation for.
Yep. And then also there's application control, being able to dictate what can and can't be changed. So like having your reg keys or certain important data files or program files, those not being able to be edited by anything other than a specific admin user, or doing those sorts of things that keep certain things from being touched. And then obviously, like you were alluding to, Sydney, was that if something were to happen, that you can control that alerting and making sure you can divert resources to be able to either resolve that issue, or this will take care of it for you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, that leads us into the third challenge that Trusted Trucking had. So they came to us, they said, we've secured the employees' endpoints, but how do we protect the data on the devices and minimize downtime? And so Chad, that brings us to the backup solution.
Yes, and I'm sure Dan's gonna have some things to say about this as well. But
absolutely,
as far as the backups are concerned, you obviously want to be able to back up those laptops. You want to be able to use that to assist you in managing your remote workers, because if you have those backups available to you, that protects the information at all times. So even though we've already said, don't save anything on your laptop, well, people do it anyways, obviously, right? Heck, I know I do that sometimes myself, and then I have to, go put it in my OneDrive, and then okay, now it's safe. So having to make sure that you're doing backups of those devices, and obviously I use Veeam to back up my laptop every single day. So if I ever had to restore my laptop, I can do that relatively quickly, because that's another part of it. On top of protecting the data that might be saved on the device, it might actually assist you in recovering those devices if something were to happen. So, coffee over the laptop situation, now you can do bare metal restore of that laptop on to a new laptop that you just had to go buy maybe at Best Buy that same day, or wherever you're having to, obtain those things, or maybe you have it in the office and it's just sitting there ready for use. And that way you can actually get that person back to working, because that productivity is obviously important. And that also, having a single console to be able to manage all of those workstations gives you a really easy way to kind of look and see, okay, what's the state of all these backups? Do I have some devices that maybe they haven't been backed up in a while? Well, what's the reason why? That might even alert you to some productivity issues. So if somebody's laptop has been turned off for 2 days, that backup is going to tell you, hey, this hasn't been ran in 2 days, and you'll be able to find out pretty quickly if that device is on or not.
Right. That's interesting. I'll say that, from a Veeam perspective, we've seen a significant increase over the course of the last, 2 years in the use of workstation agents. I think everybody always had a policy, and certainly we did back in the file server days when everybody was, at the office. But you've always got these policies where, whether it's actually an Active Directory policy or whatever, or just, hey, best practices, don't save anything to your desktop or whatever. And a lot of that stuff we've discovered may not actually be happening. So we've seen a big balloon in the use of the workstation agents. And one of the other things that's cool about this, from a Veeam perspective, shameless plug here, is that we've got a really good Mac agent. And with a lot of the modern work from home type businesses, tech companies, that kind of thing, we see a lot more Macs in the workplace than we used to. So being able to capture files that are being backed up and backing up those computers on a daily basis has been really important. And again, we've seen major growth in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the picture that we're painting for you out there is that while there's no one right answer, there's a lot of little things that you may not think about that go into protecting and enabling that workforce. So we've walked through, well, your policy should be that nothing is backed up to the device, or nothing is saved on the device. That's just not the way people operate. People are going to make mistakes, and that's, again, human nature. And as a business, we have to account for those mistakes and prepare for them proactively before they cause an issue. So that's where all of these additional security solutions come into place, and data resiliency solutions. So that brings us to our fourth challenge, right? Of, we're migrating to Office 365 to better support our remote workforce and our collaboration efforts. But we're concerned about the spike in phishing attacks and malicious emails. And how do we protect our employees and ensure that they aren't making that mistake and clicking on that email and encrypting all of their data and inadvertently infecting us with ransomware? And so, Chad, we came up with email security, right?
Yeah, and that's super important, obviously, right now that we have so much more additional emails coming in every day, especially because we talked about the not being able to pop in someone's office. So, having emails come in from your CEO or other people that are in management or executives or people that you work with is more commonplace. So it's easier to fall victim to having somebody spoof those people's emails and send them to you. And, it's really important that you have advanced email security on top of whatever you're using for, O365 or however else that you're currently doing your email. And the reason why that's super important is because these advanced email security allows for you to report threats live. So being able to tell if a phishing email, and maybe it got through, you can report that phishing email one time, and then, that can collectively update the entire organization to allow rejecting those emails from across the whole org rather than just from that single person. On top of being able to further doing core detection, ensuring accuracy, and being able to protect at a simple layer, that looking at a general subset of things, that core detection, like we're seeing here in the picture, as well as the advanced filtering. So the enhanced filtering as well as the advanced detection, those things can be altered and changed, adding policies to, like, oh, don't allow things from these places and these other places like that, as well as the machine learning that comes with that, so that all the changes that you're making, all the things that maybe it got rejected initially and you're allowing it, it'll adapt and learn from those different changes, and allows for you to actually build an actual security around your email that kind of reduces that weakest chain link scenario we talked about earlier, that if that one person clicks on that phishing email, it causes an entire outage or something like that. This really, really lowers that, that chance or that risk of that actually occurring.
Absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of different emails that come through, and you mentioned someone impersonating your CEO. And I've had those come through where there's someone asking me, pretending to be the CEO, to buy an Amazon gift card. And I'm like, my CEO would never ask me to go buy an Amazon gift card. He has an assistant for that. But it's like, I have to read it a second and be like, why is he coming to me for this? And then I look at the email address and it's not his email address. And so the advanced email security solutions actually do a great job of filtering some of that stuff out, and making sure that we don't fall victim to accidentally transferring $10,000 of funds to X person, which has happened in certain companies. We've heard of clients that had done that, or just something as harmless as buying an Amazon gift card, but still it's hackers figuring out how to prey on employees, and educating again is, I think, key to help preventing this if they get through. I think the best thing to do is to get a solution that will prevent them, but sometimes there's the ones that make their way through.
Yeah, the bad guys are doing their best to stay ahead of all of this stuff. We actually at Veeam, we actually have some training around that, where we'll get kind of fake emails, and you're supposed to behave certain ways, delete it right away, or mark it as spam and stuff like that. So they're actually actively doing some training.
Yeah, we get fake emails too, and then we'll have people forward them, and we'll be like, never forward them. You're just increasing the chance that someone is going to click on that link.
Right.
And so best practice, for those of you who don't know, if you get a suspicious email, maybe screenshot it, flag it as spam, flag it as a phish if you have those solutions in place there, but do not forward it to your team to further risk infection on those things. Awesome. So we had the fifth and final challenge that came through from Trusted Trucking was, what happens if our email or Office 365 data is compromised? Can we restore from Microsoft's backups, right? They do that. They're a cloud device, right? And Chad, help me out here. Is this your favorite response?
Nope.
Nope. So
Microsoft almost explicitly tells you that they are guaranteeing literally zero protection of your data. They'll try, but if you ever try to open a support ticket with Microsoft, you're going to find out it's going to take a week for them to tell you that they can't do anything for you, right? Or that they're going to take that long to even make that attempt, right? And no one's got that kind of time. Let's be real. No one's got that kind of time. And the easiest way to solve that is just having backup for 365. And it's not even something that's super crazy. It's actually so commonplace nowadays that it's crazy that people would leave that at risk, because with Microsoft you're riding a lot on someone who's just trying to keep the cash flow coming in, right? So making sure that you're identifying that Microsoft just considers you a number. So as far as protecting your email data, you definitely should get an email backup, and it does a lot of different things for you, and things simple as protecting that data from accidental deletion. So if somebody deletes an email, you can go get it back in a matter of minutes. I have a weird one where we have a client that for some reason once a month he deletes his entire mailbox on accident. I don't know how, but this is something that's completely mitigated that issue, because that obviously could be a lot more stressful.
That's amazing.
I know, isn't that wild? That was something that I didn't quite understand, and I saw the ticket come in another month later, and I'm like again, I'm really confused how, but you know what? We'll get it back there, and I guess we'll address it in a month again, right?
Right.
And so again, that whole mailbox was restored in I think 30 minutes, because he didn't have that not too much data going on there, and so able to get all the files back, and he's able to keep chugging along again. On top of that, backup protects you from any threat. So maybe somebody's going in and messing around with them and deleting his email once a month, right? They're like, oh, he's never going to recover from this. Delete it again, and then obviously he recovers because he's got a backup. But this way, it helps protect something that otherwise wouldn't have existed. And if you lose those things, then you can't really trust Microsoft to help you. On top of, again, this is kind of coming back to backups slowly and more growingly becoming a part of our legal requirement to like your business insurance. It might even be a part of, if you don't have backups, well, your insurance is going to cost you 10 times as much, and the backup might cost you 1/3 of that total cost. So why trade those problems with just taking care of it on top of the compliance that's being added to all of that as well, right? So it might be a part of your business insurance, but on top of which it might even be required. And so that way you're kind of covering and checking all your bases.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, you talk about compliance and making sure that you're meeting those compliances. Retention periods are huge, and ensuring that you have retention of those emails and that data from years and years back is part of those compliances as well. And so Office 365 Backup does a good job of ensuring that we have, what is our retention period, Chad? I think it's
7 years is the base, but we have people who are on like forever.
Yeah.
They won't ever
Really?
know. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we again, from a Veeam perspective, we've seen this is the fastest growing product in the portfolio today, and of course it's really accelerated over the course of the last couple of years. And I would tell you, it is not only around understanding what Microsoft is and isn't doing, but it's also about work product, right? There's so much work product now that we're keeping, not only as attachments in email, but also using SharePoint and saving stuff to Teams and OneDrive, which I think are all really good solutions, right? Especially for centralized management in case you lose your laptop and all the rest of that kind of stuff. But being able to back that up and recover, any of those important files. I, for one, am working with my boss every day on multiple Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations, and all of that stuff is in SharePoint. So super, growing criticality around the data inside of that M365 ecosystem.
Absolutely. All right, so we did have Trusted Trucking come back to us for one final question. We went through several solutions with them, and they had a really important point. They said, now that we have these products in place, how do we scale them during and after the pandemic when companies like us are dealing with limited IT staff and static budgets? It's a super interesting question. I think a lot of customers that we talk to are struggling with this. And the best thing that we can do for them as a cloud service provider is offer them managed services, right? So Chad, maybe you want to talk about a little bit of how we help them with managed services as well.
Yeah, sure. I'll make it quick since we're getting low on time. But realistically, being able to outsource that IT and having those managed services can really help get some of that pressure off of the business, and especially when we're talking in a very low resource available as far as hiring is concerned right now, on top of everyone wanting to work from home as a part of that. That might even lower your pool if you have that requirement that they have to come to the office, or not being flexible, and that might even hamper you further. So having managed services can help alleviate some of those issues and allow us or someone else to handle those issues for you. Like allow us to take some of that off your shoulders, and that cost being a lot less than that one person might cost you. And you might need 6 people, but this managed service might cover one person's salary. Now you're saving that 5-person cost to be able to grow your business or do other things, right? And that then allows for the predictable low cost. You already know how much it's going to cost. A lot of times you can get a 3-year contract further down, even longer, and those prices get cheaper. And so you can continually lower those costs if you would like, as well as it being scalable, being flexible to grow at any moment's notice, not having to be, oh, well, now I got to go buy a server and wait 6 weeks for it to come in before I can grow. Well, no, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. The same thing. Like, oh, I'm not going to be available till the end of next month. Oh, okay. Well, now I got to wait on this new person I just hired. And so that way you can minimize those downtimes, minimize those scalability issues, meet all those compliance requirements, and then having another support system to be able to assist you. So again, allowing us to have that support that can help you get through some of these issues you might be struggling with, and not having to rely on somebody internally that maybe is going to be there that day because maybe they get COVID and they're sick and they can't be there that day. And well, your business doesn't just pause for a day because somebody's out. Everything has to keep chugging along, and this way we can kind of take some of that risk out of that.
Absolutely. I think that managed services specifically is a really great solution for businesses who are experiencing that skilled labor shortage and can't hire those people to support the business growth areas that they are looking for. And so Otava is really great at empowering those companies to meet their goals without having to go through the hiring process and training someone to do something that we already know how to do.
Expertise is expensive.
It is. It is. So great. So just a quick recap for you on the 5 solutions that we walked through today. Chad, I'm going to keep having you do this one. Just a quick overview here.
Yeah, sure. No worries. So again, we'll kind of cover everything. We'll make it short and simple for you. So as far as that remote worker protection, you having those virtual desktops, being able to mitigate any of those local issues with your data, having that endpoint security. So protecting anything from getting into your internal networks now that you have a virtual desktop environment, as well as keeping the data that might be locally saved or being accessed locally safe, on top of which would then carry off into having those backups, because let's say if something happens, a fluke, whatever, now we can get that data back. Lastly and foremost, the email security and the backup of that email as well, being a really integral part of minimizing risk overall, as well as being able to give yourself an actual way to recover if something were to happen and not be relying on Microsoft to be able to save you.
Absolutely. And then all bundled together with managed services at the end of the day. If you need it, we've got it for you.
Yep.
Which
Exactly.
leads us into a quick overview on who Otava is for those of you who may not be familiar with us. So we're actually a cloud service provider here with a robust portfolio of cloud services. We offer cloud backup, DRaaS, hybrid cloud, security, remote desktop, professional services, co-location, and managed services as well. And we do this all with compliance in mind. So we are HIPAA, high trust, PCI, SOC 1, 2, and 3, and ISO 27001 compliant. I founded in 1994, and we really make it our priority to help empower our clients to grow and achieve their goals in any way that we can. We have a network of data centers located throughout the world. So we have 18 in the United States, 21 overall, 3 abroad, and presence in Romania from a support perspective as well. So all of our data centers are geographically redundant and ensure that we have network redundancies in place for backup and DR purposes. It's built with backup and DR in mind to make sure that we are keeping our clients' data not only available, but secure as much as we can control. And so why Otava? You know, we're always being asked what sets us apart from our competitors, and the same question always gets the same answer. So, you know, we believe in personalized service. We're not a 1-800 number. We're not a cookie cutter provider. We offer tailored solutions that meet our clients' needs, specific to where they are in their business and scale for growth. We know no 2 companies are the same, and we don't treat you the same. We treat you as though you have your specific goals and your needs, and we work with you hand in glove to ensure that we meet them. We offer personalized project management. We have easy onboarding, fast installations. No matter what the size of your business, we work to ensure that you are treated as you are our only customer. And we get customers all the time that reach out and say, do you have more than 1 client? And the answer is yes. We just really believe in customer service. We offer 24/7/365 technical support. Call us any time of the day. You'll be connected with a live person, and we provide our staff continued opportunities for education and growth. And so we have many certified engineers on staff that are trained in our products to ensure that they can support your business as best as they can. And we leverage the leading edge technology. So our partners are top of the line providers that are built into our network to ensure that they are the most secure and the most fast deployments possible for our customers. And we have a reputation within our industry of reliability. We have a 99.99% uptime guarantee and an industry-leading 95% customer retention rate. So we're very proud of the fact that we are prioritizing the customer experience first and foremost. And with that, I'll invite you to put any questions you have in the chat. I know we're short on time. I did see a few questions come in. that we can quickly answer. But if you didn't get your question answered today, please go ahead and reach out to us. The email here on the screen is learnmore@otava.com. We have lots of people available to help answer questions if you don't get yours answered today. But the first one that came up, I believe we answered this earlier on the call, but I'll ask it again for the benefit here. How long can Otava keep or store my Microsoft 365 data? And Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, we said standard is 7 years, but we're pretty much on the unlimited track if you need to have to maintain it forever.
Yep. So we do forever, and then in terms of 7, 10, 15, 25, and forever if you want to get real specific in measurement.
Awesome. And how often can I back up my Microsoft 365 data? A lot of questions on M365 here, as we just did that one last. I think it's top of mind.
Yeah, a lot of people do daily backups, but you can do as much as every 15 minutes if you want.
Awesome. And then one specific one about our cloud solution. So can we use the Otava cloud to store our backups? And that's a great question. So Otava is actually a Veeam cloud service provider on the platinum level. So our data centers are actually made for backup repositories. So yes, you can use it. I don't know if I missed anything there, Chad, you want to add?
Nope.
Awesome. And I think that we're at the time for that right now, but thank you everyone for your time today on the webinar. We hope that this was entertaining. I hope it was interactive for you. We hope you learned a lot. So please feel free to reach out to Otava with any additional questions, concerns, anecdotes, comments, things that you'd like to discuss. We will go ahead and end the webinar now, but again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Everyone, have a good one.